Hello, it's 5:30 p.m. here in Tehran. You're with Press TV's World News. Syria has denounced the Arab League's plans to open contacts with the Syrian opposition as interference in its internal affairs. Syrian ambassador to Egypt, Youssef Ahmed, said the Arab League's decisions reflect the hysteria of its member states after they failed to secure the UN's intervention in Syria's affairs. In a meeting held in Egypt's capital, Cairo, Arab ministers called on the UN to send troops to Syria. They also called for an end to all diplomatic ties with Damascus. The ministers said they will begin to establish contact with the Syrian opposition to offer their political and financial support. This after a Western-backed UN draft resolution based on Arab League proposals vetoed by Russia and China. The draft called for the resignation of President Bashar al-Assad, but Moscow and Beijing said it was a plan for future military intervention in the country. Kamal Wazni of the American University in Beirut believes the Arab League deliberately stokes unrest in Syria by supporting armed gangs fighting the government. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
The Arab League and some of the Persian Gulf countries actually start the instigating of this conflict in the first place. We have to remember the Qatari money and the support from Saudi Arabia and some other country in the region, especially Turkey. They've been smuggling weapons and hosting some of these opposition groups and training them and using the media to cover their activity inside Syria. So the Arab League actually chose chaos and civil war instead of reconciliation.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said a ceasefire must be established in Syria before any efforts are made to stop the crisis in the violence-racked nation. Lavrov made the remark in a joint press conference with his Emirati counterpart, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, in Moscow. Lavrov said Moscow is studying an Arab League proposal for the deployment of a joint Arab-UN peacekeeping mission in Syria. He also said that national dialogue should begin without foreign intervention and that any national discourse must include all sides. Meanwhile, the Emirati foreign minister said Damascus is incapable of protecting Syrian people in the face of violence. He noted that military action is not the right solution, however, to the Syrian crisis. A professor of international law says mercenaries are smuggling weapons into Syria for terrorist groups fighting against the government. In an interview with the Al-Ahram Daily, Ali Al-Ghatid said he's seen mercenaries, some of them Libyans, smuggling weapons into Syria. Ghatid says the weapons are smuggled via Turkey. He's also said that some Turkish, Lebanese, Israeli, American and Jordanian mercenaries are directly intervening in Syria's internal affairs. Al-Ghatid says Syria and the Arab world are witnessing what he calls an octopus conspiracy with many faces. Syria has been gripped by months of unrest, which the UN says has killed thousands. Damascus accuses foreign-backed armed gangs of instigating the tension. The US-led NATO force in Afghanistan has admitted that several children were killed during a bombing last week. That strike happened in the northeastern province of Kapisa, where French troops are based. At the time, local officials said French commanders claimed that the target was a group of Taliban facilitators. The area was checked later and there were no Taliban. Now NATO has admitted that, quote, young Afghans of varying ages were killed, but it seems it's shifting the blame on others. NATO says a group of armed men were engaged by coalition aircraft. An Afghan investigation is probing the latest civilian deaths upon an order by President Hamid Karzai, who's condemned the attack. In Pakistan, hundreds of angry tribesmen have marched in the northwestern city of Banu protesting against US drone attacks in the region.
These are the innocent tribesmen who defeated the British. Today America is terrified of their might. There is no terrorist here. They are just poor tribals. This is just American terrorism. America is the biggest terrorist.
The protesters chanted anti-American slogans and assembled in a large field to listen to local leaders denounce the US controversial attacks. Over the last 3 years, drone strikes have quietly become the US administration's weapon of choice against militants. Since taking office, President Barack Obama turned drone attacks to a twice-weekly onslaught that claimed more than 1,000 lives in Pakistan in 2010. Washington claims the drones are used against local militants, but most often civilians are targeted.
In yet another anti-American demonstration, Pakistanis have come out in Karachi to demand that the government take serious action against the United States. The rally was organized by Defy Pakistan Council, or DPC, which includes dozens of political and religious parties. The leaders of the coalition say the main challenge currently facing Pakistan is the U.S. interference. They say the DPC alliance is trying to liberate the country from what they describe as U.S. slavery. They want Islamabad to cut ties with Washington over its aggressive approaches. The DPC says the United States has turned its attention to Pakistan after failing to accomplish its goals in Afghanistan.
They announced that they will, if the government of Pakistan and the people in the power corridors, they didn't listen to their calls, to their demands, they will hold another protest rally before the parliament in Islamabad, and that would be another blow for the government.
The protesters said they want to pressure the government to keep NATO fuel supplies into Afghanistan blocked to ensure that the attacks by U.S. assassination drones will be ended.
We want to state that we won't allow the resumption of NATO supplies, and this coalition of religious parties which has come together will play a key role in ensuring that NATO supplies are stopped.
Islamabad closed the fuel routes in reaction to a US-led NATO airstrike that killed 24 Pakistani soldiers last November.
An Israeli embassy's car has blown up in the Indian capital, New Delhi, injuring an Israeli diplomat and one other person. The car exploded near a gas station after it was hit by another car. Details of the explosion are still sketchy. Let's cross over now to New Delhi and talk to Press TV's correspondent Munabar Zaman to get the latest on this story. Munabar, what do we know about the explosion?
That they blame that it might have been a cylinder of a car gas cylinder which broke out, but certain reports have confirmed that it was a blast, and the explosives have been identified. As of now, at the moment, 3 people have been injured, along with an Israeli diplomat's wife, and they have been treated in the hospital. The police right now, at the moment, they have been trying to investigate more inside the blast, and what could possibly be the reason behind this blast. They're doing an investigation. A police official team is right now holding a joint meeting along with the security agencies to identify the explosives. Back to you, Hona.
Munabar Zaman, our correspondent, joining us there on the line from New Delhi with the latest on that explosion, of course, on an Israeli embassy car. Of course, we'll bring you more details on that news as we get it throughout the day. Times, the newspaper, meanwhile, has revealed that Israel's spy agency Mossad is still illegally using foreign passports to carry out undercover operations abroad. Several English and French nationals who joined the Israeli army have told the British newspaper that an undercover Israeli woman lured them into lending their passports to Mossad. The passports were then returned to them a few months later with stamps from countries they'd never visited. The illegal use of foreign passports has in the past helped Israeli spy agents travel undercover. In January 2010, Dubai police authorities revealed that British, French, German and Australian passports were used by assassins targeting senior Hamas military commander Mahmoud al-Mabhouh. This is Press TV's World News, and these are the headlines. Syria opposes the deployment of a joint Arab-UN force to the country as Russia says a ceasefire is necessary before any action. The US-led NATO force in Afghanistan confirms several Afghan children were killed in its bombing last week. Thousands of angry Pakistanis protest against US drone attacks in northwest Pakistan. And US police shoot dead an unarmed man in front of his 2 children, saying they felt threatened. Thanks so much for staying with us. Do stay tuned. Still to come, food insecurity in South Sudan.